Hey, pleasure to meet you all. My name, as Allison had said, is Eric Barron. The future is code, so this is the slide I wasn't expecting, but the future is here, it's code. As Allison said, I own our DevOps segment across the public sector business for AWS, working very closely with our partner community and embracing kind of these different disciplines, tools, and technologies that our engineering community, ops community, and security community is looking to leverage to really empower themselves to get the levels of agility and innovation out of AWS that they are looking to exploit. And this is like my favorite slide that we have in our deck. I always joke with these guys, it's like a coffee table glossy, right, that you'd pull out, these demystification of what is DevOps, DevSecOps, because they're words, they're buzz terms that you hear in the industry. And the fact of the matter is they mean a lot of things to a lot of different people. And what we like to do from a level set perspective is really talk about really what these meant to us at Amazon and AWS and what they ultimately solved for us. And really it comes down to two fundamental issues. Because in these principles that we talk about around infrastructure as code, policy as code, compliance as code, security as code, everything truly is becoming transformed as code. And when you look at what this discipline meant for us, if you think about that first piece that lots of groups are doing, and we were doing candidly as we went in our own development pursuits of, hey, I'm a development team, I want to make a change to this application, I'm going to go ask the ops teams for some type of VM space or some environment, they're going to go out patch operating system, layer it down, middleware, database, et cetera. They're going to provide it over to development, and development's going to go make some type of a change based on the plumbing that they set forth, based on what the business is asking them. They're going to build that change. They're then going to go say, okay, here operations teams go and actually implement this change, start to do your testing, that type of a thing across their various pipelines of environments. And the ops folks would go do the reprocessing of layering down the virtual machine, the operating system, database, middleware, et cetera. They'd start going through the testing phase, and inevitably something would break. And the ops guys would call the developers and say, hey, you guys gave me a bad code drop. And devs say, what do they go? They go, well, guys, you did something that built when it was on my desktop. So the first fundamental problem that we solved with this discipline, and really as we classify it, is if we're representing infrastructure as code and we're marrying that alongside the source files that represent the workload, the application itself, we want to ensure consistency of environment. We want an apples-to-apples comparison, and representing infrastructure endpoints and all of the different pieces that make that up allow us to say, yes, here is the clean environment that I worked in with development. It's the exact same in test. It's the exact same in staging. It's the exact same in production. The second thing that this really solved for us was we got really good at and started down these paths of things called Agile development, which I'm sure some folks in the room have started down. Line of business is thrilled with these concepts. We're going to be able to build things in 3-week iterations. We're going to be able to go out and actually deliver functionality and new enhancements in these really short time windows versus these 12 to 18 to 24-month iterations we were doing following a waterfall-based methodology. And as we started doing that, we'd build 3 weeks, we'd go over to the operations teams and the security teams, and they'd start down the path of actually provisioning, moving that along. And what would happen? 3 weeks would go by, maybe they've gotten through their initial functional testing or regression testing, and the development team hands them a new code drop and says, here, we're ready. Did you guys put the last thing in? They're like, hey, this is awesome, you're moving so fast, but we didn't even get the first thing you gave us in. And then 3 weeks go by, maybe they get like their performance testing done, or they're into kind of the staging environment, and another code drop gets dropped. And they sat there, and the ops teams were like, in the line of business saying to engineering, hey, you guys promised us 3-week iterations. You guys are doing really, really great stuff. And the developers are going, well, go figure it out with the ops guys. They can't put it into production fast enough. So the second thing that this discipline truly solved for us, again, representing all of these pieces as code, allows us to say, if we're marrying the environment variables, the policy, all of the plumbing that makes up the back end that the application is supported in, and we're actually executing that, deploying that clean environment as we do our application build and build those changes, I actually can achieve that level of speed and agility that we're able to actually promise on, right? So ultimately, it's really simple distilled points that this really truly solved for us and what permeates our ability to innovate on behalf of the customers so fast. We look at the different types of DevSecOps adoption phases, right? We really look at these and we try to distill them down into kind of these cloud migrator, cloud forward, cloud native roles. Cloud migrator role being, hey, I'm really looking to just kind of move things out of my data center and into some type of a cloud service endpoint, because I want to start doing some dev test workloads. I want to start actually seeing what this cloud thing can mean for me. We look at the cloud forward audience, groups that maybe they've actually gone out and started doing some of this process. Maybe they've got a workload over, but the ops team and the security team, they haven't really embraced these levels of automation as they're spinning these endpoints up, as they're creating some of these developer self-service models, which really ultimately allow us to be very agile. So being able to work with that audience to help teach them, if you're really just kind of doing the same things in ops and security that you're doing on-prem, but pushing up to an AWS endpoint, you're really just adding potentially coding and complexity. You really want to actually create the levels of automation there so that you can spin those up. And then our cloud native groups that are really looking and have started down this path of building more agile automation into the provisioning of these environments, and are starting to enable looking at, hey, I've got this workload that's up there, now I can start thinking about slicing that, now I can start thinking about plugging in more of the true native services that significantly can drive my costs down and deliver more value back to the mission program area or what have you. And when we look at the three fundamental ways that we've been going to market, it really comes down to a couple as people move across that adoption curve, right? So we were here on Tuesday with the GitHub team presenting our security automation orchestration framework for type accreditation. And really what the baseline of that is we're working very closely with a community of about 18 security partners and DevOps partners to help with this process around, hey, if I've gone out and I've provisioned a workload and I need to have it type accredited, whether it's FedRAMP, whether it's DoD, SRG, IL2, 4, et cetera, how do I do that, but then how do I keep it there? And a lot of what we're building in concert with that community is a framework and a way for you to actually be able to achieve that. And we're actually working with an auditing body so that if you're able to use this framework and you actually operate in this way, this allows you to actually achieve that level of type accreditation as well as keep yourself in a continuous risk treatment or continuous compliance-oriented model. Because we all know in this world, the second we push something and get that authority to operate in place, the second somebody wants to go make a change to that workload, the whole process starts all over again. And we're really looking and working right now and building with the community to fix that. We've gotten very closely on our DevSecOps on immersion days, right? So this is a little bit more of a how does this discipline of DevOps work? Like, what does this really mean if I want to provision this into my overall process and start gaining these levels of agility, scalability, innovation? So how do we do that? What technologies can we help you leverage or help you build in kind of a tool chain-oriented format to start really getting better at those different types of automation? And we've been teaching that with the teams up on the stage. And then finally, these different types of migration workshops, right? So we have very, very good partnerships with a number of different solution sets, VMware and AWS being one of them, to really help as you've gone out and defined your software-defined data center structures in place. How do we help you really start to leverage some of this migration capability to start playing with these different scenarios and start gaining that level of agility and innovation that we are looking to really get out of the cloud service platform? It's important to note that there is a number of tools that actually are native to AWS that enable these facilities, right? So everything from the delivery, CI/CD tool chains, to the ways we can represent infrastructure as code, to the ways that we can handle monitor and logging across the DevOps pipeline, because it's very important for us as we actually aggregate all the different artifacts across that software development lifecycle, from requirements to test artifacts to build results, et cetera. How do we aggregate those pieces and feed those into the endpoint? Because really, we want to learn, we want to get better, and we want to know how the different teams are actually operating and how the utilization rates on the workload itself, how we can create that feedback to actually make that actionable and meaningful for the development community. But because we are in a completely open platform, and it's incredibly important for us to meet our federal customers, our public sector customers, but our commercial customers from a development audience in really what they want to leverage, A big reason why we've gotten and have been working very close with our GitHub community is because a lot of the customers that we're coming across are leveraging those tools and technologies. And we want to be very supportive of our customers in their effort in kind of enabling these three facilities around security automation and orchestration, around our DevSecOps immersion principles and cloud service migration principles to leverage the tools and technologies that they are most comfortable, both from a development side, an operations side, and a security side, again, representing all of those pieces as code. So with that, turn it over to Jamie to talk to you guys about, again, the future being code.
Permeate our integration environment. I hear this guy give a piece of this speech more or less every week. AWS and GitHub, we're working really closely, quite frankly, all over the country. This year, we've been in San Diego, Seattle, Denver, Boulder, all over DC. That was a new one. I haven't heard that one yet. That's a nice line. So the future is here. The future is code. Unfortunately, I'm not going to talk about flying spaceships and flying cars and moon rocks. Really, this is the day-to-day life in the federal government right now in public sector. But unlike the startup community or even some of the private companies out there, here in the government, the future, and sometimes is like 5 years ago, is like 10 years ago, is like 15 years ago. So if you're coming to hear about moon rocks and flying cars, unfortunately, this isn't the talk. You missed it. I gave it yesterday. I talked about machine learning and how GitHub is using machine learning to let robots write code for you. But for this is really how we can let the public sector get to that future now. I'm Jamie, principal architect here at GitHub. I actually cover all of North America, but also as one of my roles is solutions engineer and solutions architect for our regulated industries. Live here in the DC area, was software development lead, technical lead, meeting goer with the government for over a decade before coming to GitHub. So this community, this environment is very near and dear to my heart. So I'm really excited to be able to speak to you today to try to include and evolve what the public sector is doing with code, with GitHub, with software, and quite frankly, delivering their mission. Show of hands. Who here in the room has a GitHub account? Thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone. Who here has a GitHub account you use for work? Okay, that's not bad. Maybe using GitHub Enterprise? How many in the room GitHub Enterprise? Hands, thank you. GitHub Enterprise on AWS? So that's an interesting point. The decent amount of hands, over 60% of our federal customers who are using GitHub Enterprise actually hosting it on AWS. While we support other cloud providers on-prem and data centers, VMware, Hyper-V, OpenZen, we've found that the majority of people are using it in AWS. One of the reasons why our partnership with AWS is so strong. Who here is actually using GitHub at work for your day-to-day operations, but using it on GitHub.com? Using it on something like GitHub Business Cloud? Okay, decent amount of you. Yeah, some more over here, thank you. But there's a lot of you who aren't raising your hands right now or didn't raise your hands in any of those topics. You probably are dealing with something like this, right? A laundry list of reasons why modern software tools, DevSecOps, cloud development, anything fun can't be used in your organization today. And unfortunately, this is the reality, right? But it doesn't have to be the reality, right? The solutions to these problems far outweigh the problems themselves. If anything you come out of this talk today, it's hopefully that these solutions should be viable for you, your organization. They're used across the federal government today. You just saw by the show of hands in the room, this is not a new topic, right? We have over 110 instances of GitHub Enterprise throughout the federal government, over like 25,000 .gov.mil accounts on GitHub.com. We're all throughout government, and we should be accessible to you as well. Talking to Alan, who gave a talk yesterday about DevSecOps at VA, one of the things he mentioned coming up, I asked, what was the most common Q&A question you got at the end? And he was like, and not to steal your thunder, but it's not about the technology or how we integrated our process. It's how we got through the bureaucracy. It's how we actually got our agencies, got our programs, got our teams, our CIOs, or CISOs, whatever, to actually know that we can do DevSecOps, we can do modern software. And if you take anything out of today, it's a list like this, is that going to the cloud, going to GitHub, going to modern software tools that not only make writing software better and easier and more efficient and more successful, makes delivering mission better, cheaper, and faster, it's something that you can do today. I'm going to go through a lot of slides talking about individual things that GitHub does in order to meet these requirements. But if there's one of them that resonates with you, resonates with your agency, maybe it's security, maybe it's audit logging, maybe it's as simple as PIV and CAC authentication, right? Find that nugget that makes sense for you and that actually resonates with your agency, and use that to progress forward. Because you don't get to the future by buying a flying car today. You get to the future by finding out that feature on the flying car that you really want and being able to advocate that throughout your agency. And it's not just your agency, right? We have over 1.8 million customers on GitHub, right? Some of these are open source, Linux Foundation, Eclipse Foundation, Apache, right? Or some of the biggest Fortune 100, Fortune 50 companies out there, right? Comcast, Walmart, Cap One here in the DC area. We're sort of everywhere, and we're everywhere within federal government too, right? So this is not new ground you're having to trod. This is not a new experience you're having to go alone. Again, the hands up in the room just sort of prove that. There's a lot of experience in this room and in the environment, and from the GitHub team or AWS team or Red Hat team or whoever. We'd be more than happy to help you advocate for this and to figure out what makes sense. Because in reality, it's not an open source workflow that probably makes the most sense for within your federal agency. You have compliance needs. You have FISMA. You have audit requirements. So let us help you figure out how to make those work. That's literally my job, is to how to let people still use the tools and processes they want while meeting their regulation and compliance. So GitHub isn't just here to help you make software, because yes, we are. But I'm here to help make sure you can make secure software. So how do we do that? Is we talk about this sort of secure workflows that you can do with GitHub, GitHub.com, GitHub Enterprise, GitHub Business Cloud, whatever it may be. When you do it right, this is the defense in depth story, right? When you set up GitHub right with the right processes and the right tools, some of the same partners that Eric showed up earlier that we've been working with, but you literally meet NIST requirements. You meet 853, risk management framework, compliance comes out of the box while using these best-of-breed tools, while using these modern workflows. It doesn't have to be security or performance, compliance or efficiency. You can have them both. And this is just an example. I worked with a federal customer about 2 months ago, and this was just the first set of controls we knocked off in the first 3 weeks. So this is all out there for you. This isn't like, well, we set up the tools and then we have to figure out how to secure it and if we can maintain it. This can all work for you now. And how does it work, right? Well, we talk about GitHub Flow. Everyone knows pull requests, everyone knows GitHub Flows, and we think about GitHub Flow as enabling the conversation around code. The branch or the code is where the changes are happening, and the pull request is where the collaboration is happening. It's where the humans are working. But it's so much more than that, right? Especially when you're using it in a compliant way, in a business-oriented way. It's how you get the security and the secure workflows, right? So of course you get the collaboration and discussion, which is so valuable, but you get the code review, you get the security checks, you get the static code analysis, you get the dependency scanning, and in all honesty, you get the workflow management so that you know that this code doesn't get merged until your technical lead approves it, or their boss approves it, or maybe even that super rockstar ninja on your team approves it. This is how we build in that compliance, build in that workflow, so that your team and your management, quite frankly, feels comfortable that that code's not making it into production without the necessary checks and balances. How do we support that? Well, with protected branches, right? You would be, for most of you in the room, right, who raised your hands, oh yeah, we use GitHub and we use GitHub at business, at work, in our agencies. You would be surprised at how many people still don't know that protected branches are a thing, right? Well, Git's that thing that anyone can rewrite history and we lose everything, right? Well, no. Protected branches allow you to protect against force pushing so that you know your history is exactly what it was. No cheats, no way around it. Your audit log is your audit log. Require those status checks, those unit tests, those static code analysis to pass so that you have confidence that that code that's going into production has passed all of your requirements and all of your checks needed. Be able to enforce reviewers, be able to enforce separate fields. Some of those fields may be as easy as there's a JIRA ticket tied to this. There's a Confluence article about this. Or, yep, this is tied into our Docker container registry, and we have complete mapping between the current project and where we're at today. GitHub doesn't exist in a vacuum, and we don't want it to exist in a vacuum. You have tools, you have processes that you've spent days, weeks, months, or even years acquiring. I can't tell you how many times I go into an agency and it's, well, here's tool X. We acquired it 7 years ago. And yeah, it's end of life, but you know what? We've written 13 processes around this tool, and it's not going anywhere. So if GitHub's great and all these other things are great, but we need to use this tool if we're going to use anything else. Great. That's why we want to use these best-of-breed approaches and work where you are today. We want to help you detect vulnerabilities, right? Something we launched on GitHub.com, so available in GitHub Business Cloud, is vulnerability detection. We launched this last year. We're working with MITRE, we're working with NIST, and we're pulling in data from the NVD. We're pulling in CVEs and alerting projects directly on GitHub whether or not you have vulnerabilities. We found when we first launched this last November, we found something like 4 million vulnerabilities in open libraries in the first 2 weeks. Luckily, since then, over 95% of them have been resolved. So making software better, making software more secure by just natively putting your code up on GitHub. And improvements to issues, right? Most people are used to looking at GitHub issues, and it's sort of free text. Yeah, you can have templates, but you have to write what you want, right? And whether or not it meets your standard or whether it meets your PM's idea of a standard is a whole other ballgame. But what we've recently released is required fields, different actual drop-downs, so you can have more workflow and more specific information, more structured data come out of your GitHub issues. Long term, I see a lot of organizations already saying, well, for developers, this is all the information we need. Maybe this isn't what they need from a larger project management standpoint, but for developers and making sure we get the bug reports, feature requests, and configuration items, this is going a long way to sort of enforcing that qualified and protected workflow that they're so used to. And finally, pre-receive hooks. On GitHub Enterprise specifically, you can set up what we call pre-receive hooks, where you can scan all code entering the instance to make sure it doesn't have certain patterns, passwords, or other security, or just plainly best practices being violated. Maybe you want to scan all code to make sure it doesn't get uploaded with tabs, because we all know spaces is what's really important here, not tabs. And it, of course, got written in VI because Emacs is horrible. But you can do this in pre-receive hooks. Or you can make sure that your code and your commit messages are tied to a Jira ticket. Or you can make sure that your code doesn't have a social security number in it, because you're looking for a pattern of 3 numbers, a dash, 2 numbers, and a dash, and 4 numbers. You can start enforcing not just that your code's clean once your code's up there and everyone can see it, but that dirty code, incomplete code, inaccurate code, insecure code doesn't make it into your GitHub instance at all. These are all the things sort of happening on GitHub and GitHub Enterprise right now that's helping our customers make secure workflows. But these are just sort of like the basic features, right? Like, let's actually talk about how we can be smarter with what we do. What do they say? Work smarter, not harder. How can GitHub work smarter for us, right? One of my favorite features is code owners. So everyone knows that, well, not everyone. Everyone should know that code review has been proven to reduce bugs and improve code quality. And the more reviewers you have, the more eyes you have on the code, the better it gets. And we know finding bugs in development is 64 times cheaper to fix than it is when finding a bug in production, and 300 times cheaper to fix than finding a bug once that code gets to O&M. So wouldn't it be great if we could get more eyes on that code to find those bugs in development where they're cheap and easy and fast to fix? Code review, of course, is an easy way to do it. But you write code. Who do you want to review it? Well, was it Alan who last touched that code? Or maybe Alan's off my team, and we have a new developer who's really good with Ruby. Maybe he should be the one that reviews that code. Great. These are great conversations to have, but at GitHub, we want to help answer that question for you. Code Owners does a couple different things. First of all, it can suggest reviewers for you just based on who edited that line of code in the past. Because who better to know whether or not you're breaking what that code should be doing than the person who actually wrote that code in the first place. Also, you can set experts or SMEs on your team for certain sections of your code. Maybe your DBA is the code reviewer who should automatically be suggested for all of your SQL files and scripts. Maybe it's your tech lead who should be the reviewer for all of your Ruby files or JavaScript files. Or maybe it's this other developer over here who's been classified as the code reviewer for the week or the sprint. All of this can be managed in code owners, so we can automatically suggest these reviewers for you. So we can bring the right people to bear at the right times, and especially as a new developer to our team or as a new person coming onto a project, I don't have to know who the best person is. The tool can suggest it for me. We can automatically protect branches. This is a new feature with GitHub.com coming to GitHub Enterprise soon. Right now, I mentioned protected branches and all the things that it can do, but when you create a new branch, you have to go and set up the protections. One of the features we're rolling out is the ability to protect branches automatically, whether it be protect all branches whenever they get created, or protect branches in a different manner. We want to protect new feature branches with these sets of conditions. Feature branches should require reviewers. The zero-day patch vulnerability branches, we don't want any friction on those, and we're willing to risk lack of review for getting it shipped to production sooner. So you can set up patterns in situations where you can protect and manage these branches automatically. And finally, token scanning. This is something I'm really excited about. Both AWS and Microsoft have taken public open source projects on GitHub and sort of read through the public, what I call the fire hose, the publicly available information about those commits, and searched for their own tokens, passwords, and passkeys for years. AWS was the pioneer in this space about 2.5, 3 years ago, and Microsoft started doing it earlier this year. And that's great, and that's a great service that they provide to the open source community. But the reality is that the fire hose and their ability to process it is about 18 to 24 hours delayed after that commit hits GitHub.com. And that's 24 hours where someone may be taking down your servers or doing even more nefarious things as they're just creating an account for themselves that they'll use at a later time. So we're bringing token scanning native to GitHub and native to Git. Using our core contributors on Git, we're going ahead and we're adding in the necessary information into the actual Git open source libraries to provide this level of capability and building it into GitHub. We're working with partners out in the security space, which will remain nameless, but so that they can find these tokens and scan these tokens as soon as they get committed. And not just for public repositories, for private repositories and GitHub Enterprise as well. So we want to make sure that your security, our security is your security, and that we're finding and preventing these leaks for you even before they happen. And finally, AI-powered vulnerability detection. So I lied earlier. I said I wasn't going to talk about flying cars. This is my flying car. I talked yesterday about machine learning and what GitHub is doing in that space. This is one of the great examples of it. So we released security vulnerabilities. We looked at data that NIST had and that the NVD had on these vulnerabilities and suggested users fix them on GitHub, right? Fix these dependency problems they have. Well, we looked at all that data. We looked at now all of that history and transactions and pull requests around people fixing vulnerabilities, and we were able to find patterns. What does it look like when someone fixes a security vulnerability? And of course, it makes sense when they're fixing it because the CVE was released. But now we can apply these same patterns to people fixing security vulnerabilities for things that aren't in the CVE. What's the stat? Like something like 20% of all vulnerabilities actually get a CVE against it. And the average time from a vulnerability disclosure to when a CVE gets published is something like 3.5 months. What if we can use these indicators and these patterns of what a security vulnerability looks like to alert our users when they're found, not 3.5 months later when they're reported? Or even more so, what if we can use our machine learning and ability to understand issues, pull requests? We can identify security vulnerabilities not when they were released to the security mailing list in 3.5 months before they're disclosed via CVE, but what if we can identify them when the first issue got reported, or when the pull request got opened, when they started iterating on how to fix it? So what if we can have both leading and lagging indicators to make your security better? So yes, it's great. It's a great first step that we can sort of bring CVE and NVD data to you. But honestly, we want to be a leading indicator of what's going into the CVE. We want to be able to know about security vulnerabilities and alert our users to them before they even go out to security mailing lists and anything else. Because every minute that our customers or our users, open source or otherwise, are using insecure code, you're at risk. And your agencies are at risk. And your mission is at risk. We want to reduce the amount of time you're at risk. But that's smart, right? We want to get even smarter with what we do. So the security vulnerabilities we're doing right now in this AI detection, right, we're doing for Ruby and JavaScript. Python is coming out, in reality, any day now. And later on this year, we're going to support Java and Microsoft .NET languages. So this security capabilities will be available for everyone. We'll also have a native security scanner running on GitHub. With over 500 terabytes of code in our disposal over the last 10 years, we have a lot of data and information about what code works, what code doesn't, what security vulnerabilities, and how people fix it. There's already the OWASP top 10. Raise your hand if you know about the OWASP top 10, the top 10 list of security vulnerabilities. So a handful of you, there's a lot more of you who likely would like to know about it, the top 10 vulnerabilities that are typically seen throughout software today. At GitHub, we're not necessarily just looking at being a way to expose the OWASP top 10. There are great tools out there that already do that. SonarQube, HP Fortify, Black Duck, Sneak, the list goes on and on. You guys have probably paid for and used these vendors on a daily basis. We want to be able to expose the top 10 vulnerabilities or top 50 vulnerabilities we see on GitHub, right? Top 10 problems that people like you make every day. We want to bring those to your attention and suggest fixes for you. So we can help you write more secure code. At GitHub, we want to help you be a better coder. We want to help your projects be more secure. And finally, we want to enhance pull requests, right? At the beginning of this, we talked about how pull requests are the key to compliance. There's another great article out there I didn't include in the slide deck about how organizations are actually using pull requests as the foundation of their SOC 2 compliance. Or from the private space, SOC 2 is a big data center requirement of how you can show security, similar to FedRAMP and FISMA, but more for the private sector. There was a great HIPAA compliant company out in the Chicago area who literally has based their entire SOC 2 compliance on their pull request workflow. But we want to make that more functionable for everyone, right? So multi-stage review, so true kind of workflow within pull requests. Multiple reviewers has recently shipped to GitHub.com and GitHub Enterprise, so you can have multiple required reviewers and multiple stages of check-ins. And even more, one of the things the slide's showing is even actionable code review. So you don't have to accept code review in full. You can say, well, this isn't something I'm going to fix, and oh, you're right, this is something I should fix, and take them one at a time. And these are all great features, right? So I've just gone through, 15 slides, 20 slides, talking about things that GitHub can bring that lets you do compliant and secure code. Notice, again, I didn't talk about why GitHub makes you write great code, because as the show of hands in this room already demonstrated, you already know how that works, right? But there's a lot of things that GitHub can give you that aren't going to be checkboxes on some glossy. It's not on github.com/features, which is what makes this work, right? A feature is not that GitHub Business Cloud is about to be FedRAMP compliant, right? This should be complete in the next week, 2 weeks, knock on whatever wood I can find here. We've been working with the FedRAMP PMO for the better part of a year and a half at this point, helping them create and shape their FedRAMP tailored policy, helping to evangelize it and vocalize it all throughout Silicon Valley to other SaaS providers, as well as being one of the first companies to go through it, starting last fall, quite frankly, and working through with them to today. Our audit's done, our assessment's done, we're putting final signatures on paper, and it goes to GSA to sign, hopefully in the next couple of weeks. But this isn't a button you'll see on github.com/yourproject/pull requests. This isn't a setting in the admin dashboard. This is GitHub's commitment to making secure code. Because at the end of the day, the more code that can be shared in the public, the more code that can be collaborative on, open source and being able to comply to the federal source code policy. We know you need these features. We know you need these security requirements met, right? And that's great coming for GitHub Business Cloud. But still, many of you are required to do things behind the firewall, do things in your own cloud, or do things on-prem. So for GitHub Enterprise, we're working to make it available in GitHub or in AWS Marketplace, including the government marketplace. Right now, we're available in the community marketplace. You can spin up an AMI and go about your business, but you're left to do the procurement on your own, the acquisition on your own, and configure it with help, but on your own. We want to streamline this process, so that's why we're working hard, working double time, to make sure we're accessible and available where you already are, which is with cloud brokerage contracts and ability to buy things out of the marketplace. We want to make GitHub accessible to you there too, because we want to reduce, again, that friction of working with GitHub. But working with GitHub is not just buying or not just getting check marks, it's also working with GitHub. So to put a finer point of what that actually looks like, I want to introduce Alan, who can go a little bit into that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. So my name is Alan Ning. I'm a site reliability engineer at the VA Digital Service. We have a couple of projects that are pretty famous right now. Generally, the Caseflow and Best.gov are a more famous project in the VA. But one of the projects that we don't talk about very much within the VA is the VA Enterprise Cloud. The VA is actually in the middle of a huge cloud migration right now. We identified over 600 applications on-premise today, and we try to move all of them to a cloud environment. This is no joke. This is one of the biggest scale across the government space. At least 10 to 15 applications are already in the cloud, so this is like an ongoing process at the moment. So we're right in the middle of it. One of the things we found out was that, moving a cloud is one thing, but you need a source code repository that is modern for cloud-native development and with DevOps culture. And recently, we decided that GitHub Enterprise is our tool of choice because of all the features Jamie just gave you. It's actually very powerful. So we embrace GitHub as a single source of truth for the cloud, and we plan to set up GitHub instances in AWS, so everyone develop in the cloud was checking the source code in that region. But setting up GitHub is not that simple, right? So if you actually try to set up GitHub Enterprise today, you have a license. You follow the tutorial, you'll probably be running some sort of CloudFormation script. And that's pretty much the extent of the tutorial will tell you. Run the CloudFormation script, and you launched. It looks good, but that's the hello world of GitHub Enterprise. To actually work for the scale of VA, which has 360,000 employees, by the way, you need a single sign-on solution. I mean, otherwise, it's not even a starter. For starting point, you deploy, authentication, authorization must be included built in day one. So how do we do that? I was actually assigned to do this job. I have zero GitHub Enterprise hosting experience. I have very little ADFS experience. I've done Windows work, but I'm definitely not a Windows admin. So I engaged the ADFS team, the VA, and I tried to ask them, so how would I integrate this? So then they came back to me and say, what do you want? Then I found out something interesting. I didn't know what I want. I didn't know what to ask for. Is it claim rule, authorization rule? I knew SAML, but I didn't speak the language in the ADFS term. I didn't know what I was asking for. I seriously needed help at that point, I realized. I was way over my head. So, obviously, someone referenced me, hey, you should call Jamie. I'm like, I didn't know who Jamie was at that point, and that was only like 3 months ago. Call Jamie for help. By the way, that's not his phone number. I'm pretty sure you might get a Jamie there, but that's why not this Jamie. So just give you a heads up. So don't dial his number. Well, I emailed Jamie, and we found out that, Jamie is on Slack all the time, and VA Digital Service is also on Slack. We dragged Jamie into a single guest channel, and the conversation becomes much more fluid, right? I told him what I wanted, and he realized what my problem was, and we did some rapid prototyping over the next 7 days and nights, lots of weekend, by the way.
Lots of nights.
Lots of nights. A lot of like 11 p.m. and my fiance is like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm working with Jamie right now." But that was experience. So what did we work on? I knew nothing about GitHub Enterprise, and I knew a little bit about Windows. Jamie knew a lot about GitHub Enterprise, so we decided to collaborate in the cloud. I set up ADFS Windows Server, reading a lot of tutorial on a GovCloud account that the VA owns. Jamie set up a GitHub Enterprise on his AWS account, soft prototype, so there's no PII, nothing involved. This is totally an isolated environment, an isolated VPC, totally insulated from any kind of prod or non-prod staging environment, totally isolated. And we integrated over AWS. So that was interesting because this is not something you do often with support. I work with a lot of professional services, and I rarely get this level of integration. When I was working with Jamie, I felt like he was part of my teammate because this level of integration is not common in the government space. Usually you ask a question, you get an answer, or a professional service might answer you with a report of some sort. This is actually on the ground stuff. We're sending screenshots to each other, how to configure ADFS, how to configure GitHub. At the code level, he would teach me how to SSH in the GitHub instance to read the auth log file. This is like on-the-ground stuff with a general support GitHub person. So that was extremely impressive and unheard of. What did we finish at the end? Like, well, the basics. We understood how to configure GitHub user groups, users, admins. Really, there's only 2 groups that GitHub Enterprise allows. We understand how to configure the relying trust, the claim rules, the authorization rules. These are all ADFS terms that I didn't know when I went to the ADFS team for the first time. I didn't speak the language, and now I do. What did we do afterward? We actually published a detailed tech spec. Me and Jamie worked on this together. And once I wrote this detailed tech spec on step-by-step integration, how to integrate ADFS, what I did was I just literally emailed this exact PDF to the ADFS team. And now that was my ticket to success. Because at that point, the ADFS team had no comment on my tech spec. Literally, they're like, oh, that was easy. We can do that. Well, now I speak the language. Now it's trivial, right? I didn't speak the language a couple weeks ago, and now I do. We published this Jamie published it internally. We also published this internally in our GitHub repository for future references for the future DevOps. It's not just ADFS, though. That was just the beginning. That's just scratching the surface. So you got single sign working, but for the enterprise, you need backup, recovery, disaster recovery, how to scale across the entire VA, across multiple cloud, potentially AWS being one of them, and how do you make sure the replica configuration is healthy. These are secret things that GitHub might not fully document, or they document, but you didn't know where to look, and you need help for. And for every step of the way, when I set up the entire GitHub enterprise setup, I was asking Jamie, did I do it right? Does this make sense? I would send him diagrams. He would give it to me back on Slack. So it's like a seamless collaboration with my teammates. So if you are setting up GitHub Enterprise right now, or you plan to set it up, don't just consider GitHub support as just someone you email. Incorporate them to your team. Drag them to your team somehow and have a daily stand-up of some sort with them. Show them everything you're trying to do, and they can do much more than just give you answers. They might be able to provide code for you and configuration, and they can analyze whether you did the right thing or not. So it's more than just an email support relationship. It is a teammate relationship. And that's my story here. And now I'm heading back to Jamie.
Thank you.
Closing out the slides.
The one, I know along that lines, one of the things, and I see customers in here, Kieran, like the one thing you probably hear from us all the time, right, is don't struggle in silence, right? When you have problems, let us help you. Yeah, we have professional services, and we'd happily let them come on site with you and sell you training or sell you support. But at the end of the day, your success is our success. And we want to do whatever we can to make that possible and make that win. Because if you can't get to the cloud, if you can't get to GitHub, if you can't get to modern software, well, not only do you fail, the mission fails. And honestly, why am I at GitHub? Well, because I came from working with the government, and I believe in the mission, and believe in the eagle flying and all of that great stuff. But nothing helps if we can't make this successful, right? So in summary, right, GitHub is here to help the government. It's helping agencies just like you today. And we're doing it through features, we're doing it through modern development, but we're doing it through listening to your problems and listening to your compliance and helping you where you are. Maybe that's ADFS, maybe that's that legacy code scanning tool from 8 years ago that you've written all these processes around, or maybe it's something completely different. We've heard a lot of it, but I'm sure we haven't heard it all. Please, let us help you both modernize, advance, and improve. And with that, we'll be around, all of us on the stage, for the next couple minutes. We're happy to answer Q&A. I'll also be up at the GitHub booth, up in the expo hall for the rest of the day. So welcome discussions about what you're doing, questions you have, or how we can help. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.